Right, hello guys. Today is Monday. It's 7th of March. All right. I already made a video like this in Russian a few days ago. So today we're gonna talk about a situation in Ukraine. Let me just set up my camera a bit more. About a situation in Ukraine, and I've made this video in Russian like maybe last week, which said Ukraine has won, Europe is losing, well not Europe, West is losing, and Russia has lost. All right, let me just yeah, but I'm doing this video in English now. All right, it's gonna be a bit different to what I've done back then. Obviously, the situations are changing and things like this. So, but it can be found on my channel. I didn't put it on here when I was preparing for this video. Right, who am I? Well, I'm the guy who simply does a video diary, so like for himself. And talking about this situation, I'm honestly not expecting a big crowd of visitors, but nevertheless, I'm hoping it's going to reach someone and to give people some understanding of what actually happened and how things are progressing and where will they end. So, to tell you a bit more about myself, I've actually I've made a video this one. My predictions for the near future. I've done it in the beginning of the 2021, and from the minute 46 of this video, I did talk that the Russia is gonna be like at its end, but the last big hurrah is gonna be a war in Ukraine. So I was saying that, hey guys, Ukrainians need to look out for this one because it's gonna happen pretty soon. And that's what we're saying, a last big hurrah over Russian Nazi regime, really, like crazy motherfuckers that don't know what's good for anyone. Right? At the beginning of this year, I've also made this video again, not expecting anybody had seen it, but essentially I have been trying to explain the historical background of why Russians are so keen on keeping Ukraine, why they're so keen on capturing it, just history of the whole thing. I try to keep it in as simple terms as possible, so some people would say, but there's something that happened like in year 1678, which you didn't mention. Like, guys, look, this is just a simple one, but like, what I'm saying is why I'm doing this video is I kind of know subject a little bit. Like, I'm not a professional expert who spent their time on the TV, but I do have a bit of analytical mindset, so this is where I'm coming from. Some of the news, like, I should be grateful for some channels, like I've been watching, for example, the channel Funkus 530. These guys, they've been pretty good covering this conflict. They tried pretty straight with things, right? I know they've started their kind of thing with like they made some t-shirts and things like this they sell, which the money from which goes directly to Ukrainian uh, things that help people to get out or help people. So charities, to Ukrainian charities, but they're not actually, I think, military-based charities. So it's essentially charities that actually help people. Right, some other like Nemicon Network, they had a very reasonable coverage of the conflict from the very beginning. So okay, they're not big channels, but again, there's many other good channels around YouTube, and people can follow to get some information. But quite often, what I see is the information that comes across from these places is they go like, "Oh, why would those guys do this, or why would something happen like this?" And because obviously they don't actually speak Russian or Ukrainian, they do not get as much information from the inside of the networks, so it's kind of much more limited. Personally, I've shared some videos with these guys, like, and some of the videos, I hope it's not just me that shared them, but some of those videos, some people might have seen it on the internet, of a Russian soldier fighting with a door, right, and losing miserably. Well, that actually came from my town of Kherson, and it's been shared by people from there. I shared this with these guys. I'm hoping other people shared it with other channels, and the video has made it to your watch list. Watch it, it's hilarious. Right? So the guys from Funka, they have their own channel where you can actually watch some videos which are no would not be which would be censored by YouTube. They're not allowed on YouTube. But I do want to point out, like, again, like, we're gonna talk about Ukraine and we're gonna start talking from Ukraine and why Ukraine has won. So we're gonna go to this map. So if people look at the map, they will say, oh, wait a minute, the Russians have invaded all this territory, right? So why Ukraine has won? Well, something I have said at the very, like, my video, which I say I made it a week ago, more than a week ago, and I said Ukraine has won back then. And I still said, like, look, Ukraine has won, but it still needs a lot of help. And why it's needed? Well, because the help that Ukraine gets means that there's less people dying. And I'm not talking just on Ukrainian side, right? I'm talking also on the Russian side. Like, the Russian soldiers, many of them haven't got a clue what the fuck they're doing, essentially. Okay. Right, this is a little conversation I had with somebody. This has been before the actual conflict started. This is like, again, like, in conversation where people have actually wrote to me. They're from Russia, so I took out their name. I mean, and they wrote that, Putin has signed that thing where they joined the Lugansk and Donetsk, or as we say it, Lugandonia, to Russia, right? And I said, this is my answer. So there's gonna be a war in the summer. So it's on WhatsApp. So, right. And obviously here my description of how the conflict is gonna go. So again, main strikes from Crimea and Lugandonia, and then there will be a lot of strikes from different sides of Ukrainian borders to make sure that there's no centralized response from the main strikes from Crimea and the east of Ukraine. So, which we can see on the maps. We're going to go to the maps, and then here's my further description. That I'm essentially saying that, look, there's going to be one of the main aims is to burn at least a few dozens of thousands of Russian boys in that war, essentially until they lose about 20-30,000 troops. There's not going to be any sort of stop to this conflict, right? Many of these troops, they have the film crews with them, like, so there is people in there who will simply film it, and then this whole thing, right? Once that happens, like, again, people who can read Russian, they will be able to read it on their screen. So I'm just telling for people who cannot, right? And then they will use that film footage of Russian soldiers dying because they went in there to fight the terrorists, right? They will be showing those films of their Russian soldiers dying, essentially to tell to the Russian people, look, Ukrainians are Nazis, Ukrainians are horrible people who hate us and they've been killing us. And now you have to like, we're gonna have more economic problems, which were inevitable in Russia anyway, because the Russian leadership have stole billions and billions of dollars from their own people, right? But they will say, look, they're the traitors. The Moscow is encircled by enemies, so we have to, like, weather the storm for as long as, like, for many years to come, because we cannot get rid of Putin and his cronies. Like, you have to stand behind us. Essentially, that's the target. The capture of Ukraine is like, it's a secondary target, or any sort of military success is a secondary target. If it happens, it happens. But the main target is to unite the people behind the government, right? And it's going to be done by having lots of Russian soldiers killed and turning them into the martyrs for the regime. And that's what we see happening in Ukraine right now. Lots of Russian soldiers die, and that's going to move on. All right. So let's go to the maps and let's look at certain things, right? So originally when I was making a video, the Russians actually just stopped there for a few days. And Ukraine has won. We start from Ukraine and why has it won? Well, for the first one, Ukraine has got the last drop which made it feel as a nation, right? So it's got the last drop where the guys have finally went, hey, we're fighting for this. So there's like tons and tons of people lining up to join the army. And some people will say, hey, why are you not in the army? I have never served in the military, and to join the Ukrainian militia at the moment, you do need to have some military service background, right? So the best I can do is go there as an interpreter for foreign troops, or maybe help with some computer networks, but Ukraine is full of people who can do that, right? So at the moment, I'm actually in Germany, I'm actually in safety, but I do have people who are dear to me and they are all over Ukraine. So again, many people will say that, look, this is the hardest part, when you cannot do anything and you kind of sitting there waiting. And some people drown this in alcohol, some people do other things. Like personally, whenever I can, I've signed up to volunteer. And personally today, I'm actually after work, I'm actually gonna go and try and help out at the Hauptbahnhof in Berlin, right? I'm not super social, but I do try to do my best, send some money to Ukrainian army. And this is what I'm saying is Ukraine still needs a lot of help. Right, but what you see is but as a nation, there's lots of people that came together around the whole world. Like in Berlin, the support on the train stations meeting or bus stations meeting people. At some point of time, I went to a bus station to help out. We were there during the nighttime, and during the nighttime there were more people willing to help refugees than the actual refugees that arrived at the time. So I stayed there for a few hours. I went there straight after work, and just people standing there waiting to help someone. And at the time, but from the time when I was arrived, which is about 1 o'clock in the morning till about 4:30, I stayed there. Right, to be honest, there's not many buses, and the buses that arrived from Polish border, there was not many refugees. Those that were coming, they were coming because they had a family somewhere, so they knew exactly where they were going. They were not just running for the fields, right? They just, people that were arriving, they knew, most of them knew exactly where they were going. They got some help, and then they got transferred to another station or to another bus, and they moved on to their family or friends who were willing to host them. Still lots of refugees arriving, but again, this is one of the things, is the refugees are mostly women and children, and many of them do not really come here. You don't have the feeling that they just ran away and dropped everything. Of course, there's some not very good people, most of them on their fancy little cars, I call them well-paid whores, and who simply ran off, paid big bribes to get out of Ukraine. That happens as well. But also, as a nation of Ukraine, you see the people willing to fight. Now, the stories I've heard stories about guys actually giving bribes and finding some connections to get into the military. And they would go to the training and they would say, hey, have you actually served in the military? Have you ever shot a gun, in your life, a machine gun? When the answer is no, it's like, well, dude, what are you doing here? But I want to fight. Well, we'll call on you to fight when we need to fight. If there's anything else you can do, well, then go. But so there's lots of stories like this. But as a nation, Ukraine has finally kind of starting to find itself, right? Until then, it was difficult, even with Russian invasion on the east, but more and more people are uniting, from my home city, Kherson. Many might have seen the videos of some guy climbing onto a troop carrier with Ukrainian flag and other things happening, people going for a protest, refusing to accept Russia's help. That happens as well, but that was something that Russians did not expect, that Ukraine is finally becoming Ukraine. and we're talking not just about like territories which were Ukrainian, but we're also talking about territories which were under Russian control for a while. So Lugansk, Donetsk, there's been some situations where people were putting Ukrainian flags and saying, hey, we are Ukraine, so fuck off. Right? Another thing which Ukrainians have understood is the importance of information, right? Importance of communication with people, right? Importance of keeping people in track of what they're doing, how they're doing this. And it's not just on the level of big government, like, you know, the president gives the reports, but they also have a guy, and they've been started doing this for a while, but it was not seen as such a major thing. But there's a gentleman, Alexei Arestovich, he's somebody who's ended up helping the office of the president for a while now, and now he's like became kind of a face for the information from the presidential office. And they see the importance of good communication between the government and the people, right? They tried it, but they didn't see that. But now they actually finally understood the importance of that feedback. Look, we're doing this because, or we're doing this because. And I personally had this situation where I was speaking to somebody and they were saying, hey, you know, why didn't they do this? And I was like, look, you know, they didn't do this because they needed to do this, and this is allowing this to happen. And they go, okay, so there is that happening. So there's a big importance of this. There's a big importance of communication from the military. Like, I've seen videos which has been spread around my home city, Kherson, where a soldier from there, somebody people know, he said, look, you know, we're doing this because of this and this and this and this. And he's just like, I suspect just a simple soldier, or at least not very high ranked. He's quite a young guy, and he explains why the military has left the city, because they started bombarding the actual citizens, right? Civilian citizens. Again, I personally shared this video with some guys on the internet, and also I think many other people have shared those videos where the city was shelled by artillery fire. Right, so that has happened in Ukraine. Ukrainians also starting to understand the importance of supporting their own country. For a very long time, like they for example, the economy, there's what they call shadow economy, right? Well, the shadow economy in Ukraine was probably bigger than the entire GDP of the country. Like, imagine the shadow economy, the things that happen under the table, was essentially almost the size, if not bigger, than the GDP of an entire state. So obviously, you know, people were trying to avoid paying taxes in any ways possible. Obviously, they still wanted higher pensions, they still wanted good military, just as long as they're not the ones having to pay for that. Well, I think now Ukrainians have understood that the nation is not just, like, you know, getting as much out of the country. I think it was Kennedy who said, it's not what the country has done for you, it's what you have done for the country. We can also see that resurgence of, like, yeah, we're responsible for ourselves. So, you know, I think after this war, Ukraine is gonna come out a lot stronger, but also people actually being able to say, like, look, you know, we have this responsibility for ourselves, to ourselves, and we are gonna like demand this from the local governments as well. So, but we shall see. The importance, obviously, of information. They're still losing in some ways on the information war, and that's because Ukrainians still are struggling with the counter war in information. So, for example, right, I've actually shared this guy's page. This is an American commentator, Jimmy Dore. He claims to be a comedian, and sometimes he has a point to things he says, but when it came to Ukraine, he turned out he took the Russian money, and now he walks it off like a little fucking bitch. So, Jimmy Dore, if you get this from me, you're a twat, right? And you deserve this, right? This is the guy who would call Ukrainian Nazis. And this is the guy who would say that Russians are right to kill Ukrainians, like that, you know, the world should just stand and watch idly by as Russians shell Ukrainian cities, right? This is one of the faces. The other guy was, oh fuck, I don't remember. He's from like big TV service, Fox News maybe, I don't remember, but also the some American companies. And to be honest, nobody's calling them out on that. Right? There is none of that. Oh, Chris Tucker. Let's just look him up. Right, let's look him up online. I think it's Chris Tucker. I don't remember. Chris. No, not that guy. Sorry, Chris. Not that guy. Chris News. I know that guy is. Sorry, I forgot it was this guy, but he's not from MSNBC. There you go. When you want to find someone, you can't find them. But yeah, he's not anywhere here, and we're not gonna look for him for too long anyway. But what we see, I say, we don't see this kind of counter-information war. But we do see lots of Western journalists taking the money and pushing for the Russian narrative. There is another channel which is in Latvia. Let me just take a look at them. I know who they are. Yeah, there you go. History of weapons. This is a Latvian Russian speaking channel. Yes. His name is Kirill. Yes, we know that. And again, this is the guy who would tell us that, look, you know, Russians should. He was the first one to say that Russians should bomb the cities. But again, this is some channels, and they're like Russian paid for channels. They continue with the Russian propaganda, and Ukrainians still learning that they need to fight it. But again, this is going to be like something which is coming up, so people are starting to understand that. Right, so let's talk a little bit about the West, and then we're gonna get to the military, and we're gonna talk about, because when I'm gonna talk about Russia losing, I'm not gonna talk just about Russia. I'm gonna talk about stuff Ukraine has done as well. But let's talk about the West. And the West have shown its impotency. Right, you know the word impotent, right? Somebody who cannot perform. Why have they done it? Oh, God knows. But to be honest, like, from my point of view, is I'm not gonna say whether it's 100%, but there's just too many old people sitting in the governments, right? And it shows. I'm sorry, everybody hated Trump, but this was the only guy who had enough energy and enough, I don't know what he had, enough spank to start giving Ukraine weapons to defend itself, right? All the others were like happy for Ukraine to disarm itself, right? Let's remember, Ukraine has signed a treaty, not a treaty, but memorandum, where the US, UK, France joined that, and Russia have guaranteed Ukrainian sovereignty within its borders of the time for Ukraine to buy. They said, well, we want Ukraine to disarm itself, right? Give up nuclear weapons, and somebody named, oh, wait a minute, it was an American senator called Barack Obama, was on the committee that overlooked Ukrainian disarmament. Right? They've destroyed thousands of tons of ammunition, tons of weapons. Right? That all has been destroyed. Right? For guarantees that shit never happening. Right? And now the West is like twinkling thumbs up their ass, saying like, well, we're gonna do some economic sanctions. We might send you some weapons, but guys, that's the best we can do. Right? The problem they have with that is that next country they're gonna tell like, hey guys, you need to disarm yourself, right? You shouldn't really develop nuclear weapons anymore. Well, they're gonna tell them to fuck themselves. So again, anti-nuclear doctrine that West has been pushing for the last God knows how many years, well, that's finished. People know that India and Pakistan have like nuclear weapons, they're at war with each other, but now these countries are gonna say, hey, wait a minute. The West, if something like this happens, the West can't do shit. So we do need more weapons. Nuclear weapons, for that matter. Right? South Korea versus North Korea. We all know North Korea has at least some sort of nuclear program. Why South Korea shouldn't do it? Oh, because US gonna protect it? I don't fucking think so. And I'm pretty sure the South Korean Prime Minister is gonna say, wait a minute! You promised Ukraine you're gonna protect her, right? That's how far you went. Oh wait, we have like 20,000 of your troops on our border? I don't think they'll help much. You pull them out as soon as the North Korea moves forward. So fuck you people. And many other countries will do the same. So we're gonna see some crazy shit going on, and the West is gonna struggle to persuade the world that it shouldn't happen. Because of this. Because of this. Because of this. But not just because of this. Right, the thing is that the West didn't have the balls to deal with a lunatic when the shit was just starting, when he was just starting to go loony. These sanctions, they are saying they're imposing the draconian sanctions they're imposing now. They should have imposed them in 2008 when Putin has invaded Georgia. Okay, Putin managed to get away with the essentially genocide in Chechnya, but back then we didn't have that mobile connections, we didn't have the connected world, and they managed to pull the lies while bombing a living fucking shit out of the city of Grozny. But when they invaded Georgia, that's when these sanctions had to go in. Not now. You're like 14 years a bit too fucking late. And we see that the Western leaders do not have it to act decisively. They're still trying to wiggle their way in and out, saying like, well, maybe we should think about doing this. And maybe we should think, oh, these sanctions are really crippling. Like, yeah, they bite. Essentially walking. Let me put this. Yes. Into this. Right? The Moscow is in the circle of enemies. That's why we need to fight, killing Ukrainians. Right? Ukrainians are traitors. Let's go kill them. That's what Russians being told. This. Because the West didn't do the right thing many, many years ago. Okay? The West has shown that it's incapable of action. They're incapable of acting fast when it needs to be. And this is generally based on the fact that the people who are sitting in the parliaments around the West are at the age when they should get retired because they're getting retarded. I mean, you have a president of United States who cannot read the names of the people they're helping from a fucking paper. I mean, how bad does it get? The guy cannot string words together. I understand there is people behind him who take the decisions, and they really need him just to sign shit, which they say sign on the dotted line, and then they pray that he doesn't miss and doesn't sign in the middle of a page. But guys, most of the governments, they're too old. Maybe one of the things we should carry out from this endeavor of the last 20 years of pacification, we all remember how that worked, right? You know, the pacification of Hitler, that shit worked out pretty fucking fine. Right? That we do need to have an age limit at which people can get elected. We cannot have people sitting in the parliament until the sand falls fucking out of them. There's this age where we should say, hey guys, you know, time to go. We need new names, we need new faces, we need people who can act according to the times they live in. And not according to the times they lived in 50 years ago. Right, that's different times. Right, so the West has lost the plot there. Right, yes, some countries are helping, and a lot of help comes through. And I say, look, Ukraine does need a lot more help, but this help is not needed so that Ukraine could win the war. They already done it. Trust me, and we're gonna go through that. The help is needed to stop people from dying, and we're not talking about just about Ukrainian people, like the Ukrainian civilians. We're talking also about the Russian soldiers who are being sent there by a damn lunatic. We're talking about Ukrainian soldiers. Yes, many of them are like military, professional military, but why do we want them to die? I don't. I don't want anybody to die. Not of the old age. Old age, I think, is a good way to go. Right? And we're going to have that happen. But we also see that a lot of Western companies going like, hey, you know, we need the Russian market. Guys, again, like, you know, this talk is bullshit. And I'll explain to you why. The Russian market for many companies is smaller than the market of Poland. Right? Overall, people like the car manufacturers, alright, maybe Coca-Cola gets bought, the drinks get bought by more than 30% of the Russian population. Maybe not. Maybe about 50. But it's still not so many. And yet Western companies go like, oh yeah, maybe, just maybe, right? We might think about it. The West has gone from like, yeah, we're happy to do the right thing to like, well, actually, you know what? Let's just think whether this thing is gonna cost us extra 100 grand. Right, the West has lost the plot, and there is no leaders in the West who can actually get it back at the moment. Because most of the leaders, they are people from the 90s and 80s, and like, you know, these people should have retired in 2005. We get people elected to the parliaments around the world which are 60 years plus. The official retirement age is 65. And they still want to get elected at 65. Time to retire, people. Go away. Become advisors. Do something else. You know, go teach in the school. God knows Europe needs teachers. Go teach in the school. Go help in the hospital. Do something useful. Just leave the power. And we see that, like, you know, and actually same happening in Ukraine, is that the old people, they're having issues of letting go of the power they had. Right? Learn to do that. That's a very important lesson. I have seen that lesson in Ukraine. The previous president of Ukraine, instead of helping the president of Ukraine now, he was fighting him. He was raising demonstrations. Right? Instead of saying, hey guys, we're at war, and we see that the old generation is doing this. Now in Europe, oh look, we can't leave our places in the parliament. I can hardly walk, I need a walk, but I'm gonna sit here until I fucking die. Because people vote for the parties, and these guys have the power in the parties. Parties need to change. Parties need to bring new people. Yes, they'll make mistakes. We all make mistakes. What we have seen is the biggest fuck up by all these old fucks. Not just in Ukraine, in Georgia as well. Now that's when they had to start acting. When this happened and this happened, by that time Russia should have become a pariah. Maybe then there'd be less issues in the war. Maybe Syria would have not happened. Right? How many cities got bombed, have completely leveled with the ground in Syria? How many millions of people displaced? Well, that would have not happened if after this and after this, Russians had the sanctions they're receiving now. The lack of action by the West means millions of lives everywhere else. The West is losing, and they still don't fucking get it. Pass on the message, please. If you're listening to this, if you have the patience to listen to me talk, there you go. Pass on the message. Right, so let's go to the Russias and Russia losing. We're gonna talk about the military situations, what happened, and about social and political side of things. One of the videos I showed when I was talking about making future predictions, I was saying that look, Russia is in deep trouble. Personally, I didn't know how deep the trouble really was. Right? I really didn't. I knew there's a deep trouble, but I didn't understand how deep it was. It's actually very deep, and we're not talking just economic. We're talking social, we're talking political as well. And Russians, the decision to admit these so-called republics here, which are run by Russian cronies, was to try and unite the people, because people already in Russia started talking, hey, why do we need Chechnya? Why do we need this part of the land? If they want to be free, let them be free. Why do we need Crimea? So obviously after so many years, and there were slow sanctions imposed, people did start to talk, hey, why do we need all this? Right? Our government doesn't seem to listen to us. We are having financial issues. We are having problems. We'd rather do this rather than concentrate on all of this. Right? Personally, when I talk to people, I did say that, look guys, we're gonna have to see what's gonna happen over the spring and actually summer to be able to evaluate the situation in Russia, which protests are gonna be there, what's gonna happen. And then that's when we're gonna know exactly when they will attack. Right? And that's what many people thought is going to happen. Right? I'm probably not the only one who said this. Right? Turns out when I was on the helping out or going to demonstrations here in Germany, I actually met Russian people who escaped Russia or left Russia, whether it was some years ago, but still keep in touch, obviously. And they gave me a description of the situation, because I have some friends from Russia, but they mostly lived in Moscow. So I had met people who are from other areas of Russia, and they were saying that the issues in those areas are far and deep. And those issues, you get some people who are doing pretty well and they still do okay, but there's also lots of issues in the small towns outside the few central cities, where people say, look, why the fuck do we need Moscow? We want to have, we will do better on our own, right? They have local people, local leaders. They would not be able to unite Russia, but they're capable of taking people with themselves, and people like kind of respect them. We could see this last year. One of those guys got arrested. It was from somewhere east in Russia. I don't remember the name of the city, but they had thousands and thousands of people coming out for the protests for weeks because that guy was arrested and they knew it was a fake accusation. But the Russia has removed the local leader, which he could take people with him. Somebody people actually listened to and respected, and who they thought is gonna join, like who's gonna say, look, we're better off on our own. That was the whole thing about it. Right? These kind of leaders appearing in other areas of Russian Federation. There are cities which people say, look, the people from Moscow half the time don't know my city actually exists, let alone being able to show on the map whereabouts is it. Right? And they say, I don't care. They take all our taxes. Our city's in deep shit. But all our taxes go to make Moscow look nice. Right? People in Chechnya, the reason the Chechnya was doing so well is because during these wars, they've actually essentially managed to fight off, even though they didn't manage to beat off Russian invasion. They did manage to fight off their right to keep their own taxes. And I know people are going to laugh at me, but what many people don't understand is that Chechnya has got their own oil fields. And the money from those oil fields is essentially what stays in Chechnya. This is the money that allows Chechnya to become a very nice looking area of Russia and have a lot of money coming in. Essentially, those are the money from the oil fields of Chechnya that are staying in Chechnya. That's it. Nothing more. They're not getting anything extra from other regions of Russia. Same as many other regions, they have their own natural resources. They have their own factories, but all the money, all the tax money, they stays in Moscow. It doesn't go to the local budgets. So they have shit roads, horrible hospitals. If you I have a friend who came over. She stayed in the city of Novgorod. She decided to go back to live there for a while. She had a British citizenship, but she had a dual citizenship of Britain and Russia, and she decided that she wanted to go back to stay with her family in Russia for a while, right until she ended up in a hospital in Novgorod, where she was sharing pictures of the toilets which were built in 1945, like no doors, no cubicles, nothing like this, just an open fucking room, right? And then the paint falling off the walls, and the drip being hung not on a proper hanger, but somebody had to bring in the coat hanger, put it next to her bed, and put that drip on EV drip. I'm not a medical person, so yeah, put it on the coat hanger, and it was sellotaped to her hand, not by proper plaster or anything else like this, by an electric, by the sellotape, which is you can buy in an electric store, essentially like wrapped around your hand. That was the quality of life people were seeing, right? Not Moscow, not some central cities, but that was the city of Novgorod. That's a pretty western city there, right? Sure, over time things, they say, improved. I'm not gonna go there. I'm saying only what I've seen. But those problems existed all over Russian Federation. Usually what Russia did is it would essentially start a war with someone over every other 8-10 years. And like first it was the Chechnya, then it was Georgia, then the Ukrainians have kind of broke their schedule by having our own revolution and kicking out a corrupt president, and then the Russian people started asking, wait a minute, can we do the same? And that's when you had the invasion of the east of Ukraine and capture of Crimea. to say to Ukrainians like, hey, they were not to resolve, Ukraine or anything else like this. They were to resolve their internal problems. Invasion of Georgia, again, it was to not to save some people in Georgia. It was to resolve internal Russian problems. Invasion of Georgia happened when people started asking about all the money that was spent on Winter Olympics, and they were saying, hey, wait a minute, all this money was spent, where did it go? There is some misuse there, right? And people started getting upset that they having issues while problems in their home cities. And all of a sudden, now look, the war with Georgia happens, right? Then Ukrainians kicked out the corrupt government. Oh, look, wait a minute, there's a war in Ukraine. Look, let's capture Crimea. Right, and that kind of united Russian people around the regime for a while. 8 years, wait a minute, exactly 8 years happened. No, not even 8, 7. 7, 8 years. 7. 8. Yeah, actually exactly 8 years now since the Russians have captured Crimea and started the invasion of East Ukraine. Every 8 years they have a war. They invade someone. Right, and then West did nothing. So now that the issues in Russia have become so big, so they decided to do a trick. They said, look, we're going to accept these territories and hopefully the Russian population is going to support us because look, we've done a good thing. But actually what happened, I suspect, is once they have done it, what they understood is that the people's opinion about this was like, yeah, fuck these crazy motherfuckers. And this is why the war had started, and it had started much sooner than they hoped for, because I have noticed a lot of anti-Ukrainian propaganda coming around Western media for about a month before the war started. This is why I was saying, like, look, the war is probably going to happen by the summer, because you do need some time so that the media that you bought have set up the Western opinion that, look, the Russian invasion of Ukraine is actually something good. Sorry, I'm just talking too much. Right, they needed some time to set up not just their internal opinion, because obviously many people were still, not supporting the war as much, but also to set up the opinion in the West. This is why we see like lots of Western journalists who have been paid off by Russians talking about Ukrainians as if it's a bunch of Nazis. Obviously, a bunch of Nazis that had 75% vote for a Jewish president. Wait a minute, how many countries in the world have actually got a Jewish president? Except Israel. I don't know many. Please point them out. Please point them out, the countries where the president is openly Jewish. Except Ukraine and Israel. Right? So yeah, basically Ukraine was a very kind of profound case of success next to the Russian territory, and the success which Russia was saying is a failure. But what I've seen as well is something coming out on YouTube, some Russian channels, actual state channels showing news, and they were showing people who were living in those poor regions, and there was an interview. This is when I really kind of sank into me that the war is inevitable, right? There was a woman which was living in a flat, which I'm living now, in a 30 square meters flat, right? Now she was living in something like this, with pretty much no running water. Like the walls were like so bad you could see them peeling off. Like the flat was in state of big disrepair. She had 4 kids, 3 or 4 kids, and her husband, so they're all living in the same little flat. And she was saying, look, this is the state where I'm living in, and I'm looking the news from Ukraine, and the children in the kindergarten, they have like they have like buckwheat, which is considered a dietary food for kids. Most of people don't actually eat it outside of Soviet Union, but can be very delicious if you cook it right. But she was saying they have buckwheat, they have like pieces of meat on their plates in the kindergarten. and it doesn't cost much. You know, these people who are supposed to be suffering under the Nazis, they speak Russian, they listen to Russian language music, they read Russian language books, they can afford the books, and their children go to a kindergarten where they have a Russian language teachers, and they having like very nice food and nobody's killing them, while she lives in Russia and she can't even afford to send children to the kindergarten. Right? It was on the news. People who speak Russian might look it up. I wasn't looking for this. It was a while ago. So that was the thing is like the Russians were suffering economically not because of the sanctions which were put on by the West, but because of the actions of their own government. And they understood that. Right? So many of them still support the war, just the way the nation is. If there is a war, we have to get band together and fight. So if there is any war, they will band together, and many support war quite often to the detriment of themselves and without the understanding why this war is actually being fought. That's a fact, but overall they were suffering, right? Not, and again, there was the Russian sanctions against the West were that the Russians have said that the West cannot supply food to the Russians. Essentially, they banned all the food products from the West to enter their country. Right, this was not the Western sanctions, they were Russian sanctions, who banned people from Western Europe, from European Union, from Ukraine, and a bunch of other countries. Any food inputs from these countries were banned in Russia. Just so that people understood that when Russians will say that the West didn't want to supply us with some food supplies, they are lying. But obviously, these kind of sanctions have made the many food products way more expensive in Russia than they were in the rest of the world. This meant that the people started suffering. The cost of their food basket has gone up because a lot of food products are not really produced in Russia, or they produced at such a low quality that if you're gonna buy them, you better be a very, very brave person with a stomach made of nuclear reactors. Literally, like some of the stuff, it's just so bad you can't imagine that. Like, but obviously this caused a lot of troubles there. So when they said that these territories are going to be joining Russia, and they demanded that they would be accepted not just in these borders, but within the borders, because obviously there's Ukrainian regions, they're like states in United States, or like in Germany there's like little states as well, like Berlin is a state, uh, uh, Bavaria is its own state. Like again, like same, these are regions. So they demanded that this whole territory cross this line. Right? They said, look, we want this whole thing. Obviously, they knew this was not going to happen. But they said, look, this is what we're accepting. So again, the war was inevitable, but it was not expected to start as soon. Why as well people were not expecting this war to start as soon is the fact that 150,000 people, even 200,000 people, to capture Ukraine is insane. So, and this is why when I was writing to my friends, I said there's going to be main strikes from Crimea across here, and from here attempts to break through. So these attempts to break through were actually stopped by Ukrainian military when Russians attacked. And here they have actually managed to get a lot of success, but not as fast and as much as they hoped for. And why did this happen? Let's go a bit to the military. So the way Russians did the offensive is actually, I've heard some American people in the US asking, why do Russians planes fly and attack this area of Ukraine versus actually supporting the troops in these areas? Well, when the Russians started attacking, they had attacked the military bases around here. So they've sent the troops beforehand, some of the special forces, which would set off explosions in the military bases right at the time of the invasion, so that the military could not react to the attacks. Right, and what we see is that here was the most organized and the most, how do I put it, people who knew exactly where they were going and how to get there. So the people who attacked from Crimea, and they went to my home of city of Kherson, which is now captured, and then they went to Novakhovka, which was the dam. Here, from here they could get water to Crimea. Right, again, the issue they had is that when they originally captured the Crimea, they refused to sign the documents which would open the supply of water to Crimea. Again, they were saying that Ukraine wouldn't supply water to Crimea. What they were saying is that Ukraine wouldn't supply water to Crimea for free, because the water to Crimea runs on an artificial channel which needs to be maintained, which needs to be cleaned, and obviously it's still a product. So it's like, and it's been built by a Ukrainian country while it was still part of the USSR and maintained by Ukraine before the Russians captured Crimea. So Ukraine and the Russians have refused to sign the documents, like a treaty, like a deal, where they would say like, yeah, we'll pay so much for water. It wasn't a big sum, but the documents would mean that they accept that they have actually invaded and captured the Crimean territory and it's still Ukrainian territory. Russians didn't want to do that, not even for the money, but then obviously they have to explain to their people why they are still capturing Crimea. So Ukrainians have cut off the water supply and electricity supply because, again, Russians didn't want to sign all the right paperwork. It wasn't just because somebody protested it, but it's also like there's a paperwork, you need to sign it or you can't have it. Right? So over the years, there were big water reserves in Crimea, but they have been completely depleted. They're now empty. There's nothing there. So Russia cannot even support their own troops on the water, which is there that they captured Crimea, let alone the actual population. So they needed the access to the water. They needed to control the crossings here, hopefully get some control over this side. And then they needed to strike across to create a land bridge so that troops have free access from these sites. I also said that there will be a lot of strikes around the borders of Ukraine, again, which will happen here, and them all aiming to Kiev. Attacks through the nuclear reaction, Chernobyl, right? That one's funny one. And most of their troops, they're not actually capturing territory, so the map shows us, oh, this is a captured territory. No, most of their troops are actually moving across the main roads. So when the attack here happened, they essentially left, like there's a town of Kakhovka, lots of villages and stuff like this. They literally went past them. They stomped through them at the highest speed they possibly could, because there's a bridge here which they needed to cross really, really fast. They managed to get to the bridge, but even having the superior forces, once they got to the bridge, they did get stopped by Ukrainian military. They managed to get to Kakhovka here, but again, they had days of fighting by not as many numbers of Ukrainians. They didn't manage to realize their superiority. And the thing is to really attack, like very many wars say, you need on any direction of an attack, if you really want to have a success, you do need 7 times the advantage in people, power, and technology, right? Which Russians didn't, right? They attacked through them. Yes, Ukrainian troops were all over the place, so obviously there's a very long border which they need to control. There were situations when in some places Russians would attack, they would go into Ukrainian territory, but I think it was somewhere here. Oh, I don't know, but it was not sure, but which there's a little village, and they went in from the Belarus, I think, as a couple of tanks, some people carriers, some cars, and Ukrainian border guard didn't fight them. They literally just retreated to the main army unit, and then they captured those Russians on the road, and essentially killed off. There were 5 armored personnel carriers. They got destroyed, obviously with people inside them, I suspect. Right, there were 2 tanks which managed to get away, and some cars, one or 2 cars were destroyed. Essentially, like, they went in with a small force, and like, this is why Ukrainians need to have their armed forces like spread out. They cannot really connect them into big units which would attack here or there, right? Because obviously, not only do they have to fight this area, but they still have to protect this part of Ukraine as well, right? But 150,000 that Russians used to attack us from the start, they failed. They didn't get through as much. So we see people them sending conscripts now, people who never had proper military experience. But these 2 strikes were probably the most well organized ones, and they failed. Like, they didn't take this crossing and my city till like day 4 or 5 or even 6. Like, so it's like 4, 5, 6 days it took them. This is something they should have done in the first 50, 60 hours if they wanted to have any kind of part of success. And they failed. Right? They also did not manage with their missile strikes and things like this. They didn't manage to destroy Ukrainian aviation. But we're going to talk about that. We're going to come back to that. So they've also turned their troops here, and they kind of moved over. So they managed to create a small land bridge. But as we can see, they don't really control much territory. This is essentially, they control like a main roads here. They don't control the cities. They don't control the side roads. What this means is that essentially there's small Ukrainian strike groups which can travel around and hit not the main battle troops, right? They can hit their supply lines. Obviously, many people have seen that Russians are losing lots of like tanks, like propelled grenade launchers, whatever else they have, like mine launchers, the artillery pieces. They lose a lot of them on the roads, and Ukrainians actually just pick them up and drive them off. So again, like there's a situation which was near the Sumy, okay, somewhere. This is Kharkiv, Sumy, Chernihiv. My knowledge of the map of Ukraine is slightly rusty. Sumy, there you go. There was around here where the Russians have actually lost the tank, and the locals went like, oh look, there is a tank. So they phoned in the militia and said, hey guys, there is a tank somewhere around here, like, do you mind coming and picking it up? And actually Ukrainian militia went over and picked up the Russian tank, and it's now being used in the defense of the city of Sumy. Right, but why is it the cities that they attacked, why are they so important? Like Kharkiv, Kiev, right? You see a lot of efforts concentrated on these 2. Right, here there is some concentration, but not as heavy. Why is that important? Why was it important for the Russians to capture Kherson and Mykolaiv? Right, we're not talking about Odessa as much, but these 2 cities were actually quite important for them. And the answer is technologies. And so that people understood, when the Russians originally invaded Ukraine, in the city of Donetsk, there was a big factory which was producing artificial crystals. Artificial crystals is something that they would use on your watch instead of the glass because they don't scratch, but also they use them in aviation technology. So for example, artificial crystals is used as canopies for the fighter jet because they obviously more stronger than the glass and plastic, but also they're not detectable by radar. So in the fifth generation fighters will often have the canopies with some sort of artificial crystals they used in high technology, so like computer production and things like this. And that factory was one of the two places which could produce really big crystals. So like here and in Kharkiv. So there was an institute of crystals in Kharkiv. But when the guys they invaded in Donetsk, Russia did not have its own crystal production. It had a small like institute which worked on that. They didn't manage to produce anything bigger than a fingernail. And then they invade in 2014. By 2015, the Russian Institute of Crystals has been transferred to a new city, and it's got a bigger. And they got bigger place, and they've got a factory which produces some of the biggest crystals in the world. Guess where it came from? Right. What else happened? Well, in here there's in Lugansk and Donetsk there were two factories which produce trains and anything for the railways, like railway cards. Right. After the Russians invaded, those stopped working, they disappeared. But all of a sudden, some very old Russian factories who never produced anything for the last 20 years are starting to produce new railway cards, new railway trains, everything for new stuff comes out from these factories. I wonder why. Yeah, it's these people who had the equipment, these are the people who had the technology. Now they've been all moved to Russia. So we're looking the same thing. Kherson and Mykolaiv. Those are the two cities where biggest shipyards in Ukraine are, right? For example, Kherson has recently started producing a floating ship docks for some countries in Europe. They started producing ships, building not full ship, but bodies of the ships and some other stuff for companies in Netherlands and somewhere in some Belgium orders. I don't remember from the top of my head, but yeah, but for Europe, right? In Mykolaiv, this is the only place which produces particular turbines for the ships, which are used as engines. And the Russia did not have those engines, so any ships they built required those engines, and they never had the technology, never managed to build the new engines. Right, they used diesel engines, I think, on their ships, and they tried to build some nuclear stuff, but they were building ships, but they did not have the engines. This is why for half of their big ships have basically stopped and couldn't move anywhere because they could not maintain the engines they had. So Mykolaiv is very important for them. They would try to steal everything that is not nailed as long as they can get it out of there. Right, in Kherson it's now impossible because the bridges across the Dnieper River have been blown and they cannot use the railway to get things out. And it's a lot of equipment there. And they cannot get to Kherson at the moment through water because obviously this area is still controlled by Ukrainians. So same for the city of Mykolaiv. Like they needed that equipment, like for their shipbuilding industries. Otherwise, that's all. It's dead. They don't have the technology. Right? City of Kharkiv, one of the most disputed. They're really pushing for that. Again, this is one of the technological hubs of Ukraine. So some of the most famous tanks in the world, T-34, were invented and built here. Right, designed from the scratch. T-64s, T-72, a lot of modifications have been built here. Most of the modern Ukrainian tanks have been designed here, and they've started building some. And one of the key things they have here is the production of tank engines. Again, Ukraine have managed to produce an engine of over like 1,000 horsepower, so something that the Russians were going to put in their Armata tanks. And Russians could never produce the right engine. So their armatas, they cannot produce armatas in big quantities because they do not have the technology, they do not have the know-how, and they don't have the skills to build the engines. They don't have the equipment to build the engines they require for their tanks. It's here. Everything they want is here. And even if they bomb the factory, even if they destroy some equipment, they're still hoping to catch all the documentation and everything they need to move to Russia to have their own production, to try and set up their own production lines. Right, this is why they need it. They also need this as it's a big city, so they can have some sort of legitimacy and maybe send some ex-Ukrainian people who ran off to Russia during the revolution in 2014 to claim that they're the new government of Ukraine. But obviously they're failing miserably. We see that the strikes are not getting anywhere. Okay, and Kiev obviously very important, because as long as Kiev stands, they feel that they don't have, again, a lot of legitimate reasons to be there. And to be honest, it's just taking a piss of Russians. And they're hoping that by destroying Kiev, they can destroy the centralized command of Ukraine, and they're hoping it's going to break Ukrainian spirits. As the protests in the city of Kherson have shown, that not really much. They captured the city, and then their troops had to leave the city, because if they stay there, they will in fear for their lives. And as soon as they go out of the city, they got the living shit bombed out of them. Didn't work out the way, but yeah, they didn't stay. So the city, if I watched some videos from Kherson, you don't see Russian troops on the streets. They just ran off. They're not there. So they say they control the city, but really they just control some roads around the city, and using their weapons to stop people from leaving, as they're trying to use them as a shield. Right? A lot of Russians die on these roads. Again, it's an overextended supply lines. They did not capture the city of Mykolaiv. People are really pissed off there because they bombed living quarters of civilians. Right, and now they're trying to go up here again, an insane move, because there's just nothing. They're just being shot at from every point of view. And this is what I'm saying. The Russia is reaching their first target, which is, like I said, it's tens of thousands of Russian soldiers need to die in this war. Right? They hoping that this is gonna unite the Russian population around the Kremlin. I'm pretty sure that's gonna reach a completely different result, and that Russia is going to dissolve. Right? So again, I already said it to Ukrainians that about 2-3 months after Ukraine finishes this war, Ukraine should be prepared to accept Russian refugees, people who are running from the shitstorm that's going to happen in Russia, because this whole place is going to dissolve. There's going to be own little armies, and people are going to be trying to work out, who's the biggest boss. We're going to see some new borders in Russia. But people say that Russians would have had bigger success if they used their aviation. Well, the thing is, they do. But the problem they have at the moment is that they have not managed to destroy a Ukrainian aviation. And some people might have heard about Ghost of Kiev. So it's like one of the few people that flies over Kiev, but he's got like 20 or close to 30 kills. And many people will say, but Ukrainians are fighting on old jets and they're still beating better Russian jets. Well, this is one more big place where Russia have lost completely and utterly, and Ukraine had won. And they won that before the war even started. Very simple thing. Ukrainians have got a better technology. It's not better by miles, it's better by margins, right? So But as they say in military, like if your equipment is 10% better than the equipment you had a year ago, this is a next generation of equipment. And Ukrainians do have the next generation of equipment. Not next generation, but close to the next generation of equipment. And all that is not because they have more tanks or more planes, but because, for example, many Ukrainian tanks have been upgraded with Western electronics. Right, so the night scope, night visions, the actual scopes and vision equipment that they can use. The Ukrainians have started a program which basically is in its infancy, but it's been supported by many countries and interested, where they would use special helmets where a tank driver could look out of their tank as if it's a car. It's like 360 view. It was just in its production, but to do that they needed the technologies, and the infant stages of those technologies have been used on Ukrainian tanks, and the equipment came from the West, so it's like they've used some French equipment. I think they brought up this for the tank visions and things like this. So essentially, Ukrainian tanks can see Russian tanks about a kilometer before the Russian tanks see Ukrainian ones. Ukrainian people carriers, right? They have also cannons, like it's a version of the Russian 30mm cannon, but it's a changed version. It's got better. They set it up so it's not jumping up and down when it shoots. But one other thing they have is that Ukrainian battle modules in troop carriers, right? Бронетранспортеры, it's APCs. There's different versions of some of them, but they also have better aiming equipment. Essentially, they can shoot before Russians see them. There's less of them, right? So significantly less. But if your tank can take out 3 tanks before they even get to see him, it usually helps. And by the time they see him and start aiming, he can actually run away because they have better engines. They're more mobile than Russian tanks. They obviously know the area better, so they can set up traps. But not just on the ground equipment. Of course, a lot of equipment is still Soviet equipment. It still uses the Soviet like shells and things like this. So it's not this is why we're saying it's not the next generation, but it's closer to the next generation than Russians have. And again, it's like by margins, but these margins matter, especially if you have this margin which gives you like an advantage of even 100 meters, let alone kilometers. But the same thing happened in Ukraine with the airplanes. While many people were concentrating on the tanks, what many people have missed is that over about 1.5, 2 years, like a year ago, a lot of old Soviet planes that Ukraine had got an upgrade, and I think it was by an Israeli company, the one which upgrades old Israeli planes to more modern standards. So essentially, Ukrainian got the similar upgrades. So they got better electrics, they got better night vision, they got a lot of better aiming equipment. Essentially, what happened is they can see further than the Russians can. Right? They can detect the targets sooner. They can react to it faster. They can react if they get seen, they react to this faster. They notice sooner. And all this put together essentially means that the Ukrainian airplanes, although it's the same frame, it's the same MiG-29, it is way better than the Russian planes that fly in Ukraine. And another thing which happened in Ukraine is that anti-air defense systems. Again, we have to remember that Ukrainian pilots are flying over Ukrainian territory, right? So they can go into the fight with easier minds, right? If the Russian pilot gets knocked down, well, and he lands in some village where there is no military, but just very pissed off people because he just dropped these bombs on them, they're not going to be very nice to him. And even Ukrainian government says, hey, you shouldn't really, beat these guys to the ground. We're a civilized country. But I pretty much understand, and everybody in the world will understand that, look, if you're a professional soldier who just dropped bombed on a village and now you're landing next to that village, anybody who survived there are not going to be very civilized. They're going to be very, very pissed off. And your survival chances are kind of pretty fucking low. Right, so Ukrainians flyers are flying. And again, we're going to be coming back to the question is why Russians were bombing the airfields and things like this and attacking cities with missiles all the way over here. Right. And they were doing this for actually a pretty smart reason, and that's to stop Ukrainian anti-air defense to be collected all here. So Ukrainian anti-air defense needs to be now spread out, very much like other troops all over the Ukraine. Right? And they're doing this, they're sending in their paratroopers in those areas specifically for that reason, right? And again, paratroopers is somebody who's a very well-trained soldiers, and I think now maybe right when they're given a task to fly somewhere in Ukraine after what happened to a couple of others, they're probably telling their commanding officers to go fuck themselves. That would be probably the wisest choice of words, I'd say. Very much like what Ukrainians said to the Russian battleship. Alright, Russians don't have that many of them. They don't have many of those groups that could come in and sift through the territory and do some terrorist attacks around the Ukraine, right? These people get caught. They were the high professionals. A lot of people in those attacks, they have professional soldiers, but they also have tons of conscripts in there who are dying there for no good reason. Right, and they come in here, these groups get destroyed, so they cannot do as much damage anymore. The paratroopers, the high level troops really don't want to fly anyway to capture any airports or anything else like this, because they get killed off, which happened in the place of Gostomel, I think, just at the start of the war, where they sent in their top units of paratroopers. They flew in helicopters, they flew in low and fast. And I think one of the helicopters did get shot down, but on the way back, they landed on the airport. And again, the airport guards, they understood they were outmatched. They kind of stepped back, keep their cool, waited till the main military unit turned up, and then kicked the living shit out of the Russian paratroopers. No landing strip for the Russian military. Just yesterday, the Russians have landed some of the planes and helicopters on an airport near my home city. Ukrainians, again, we can see that would play a bad joke on the Russians, because they're on the main road. Ukrainians just came around at got the comfortable position, shot at the airfield, killed off the helicopters and airplanes. There you go. All right. That's about what we're saying about them not having the control over here. Them having to send in the troops where they go across the main roads, but they have no actual control over territory. Alright, they go through the village, everybody says, yeah, hello, nice to see you, as soon as they fuck off, and the villagers go and do something which does not help the Russian troops. I mean, stealing their tanks and setting them on fire. Hopefully not blowing themselves up in the process, doing a lot of fun, but obviously sometimes dumb shit, but it happens, right? Russians do not have the mental capacity, the military capacity to do all this. Now, let's talk about this. Let's talk about Chernobyl. Now, we see obviously the Russians moved over across. We can see that they don't really controlling the territory. It's just the movement across the road, expanded supply lines where they die. Right, again, the target is not to capture Ukraine. Remember, the main target is to kill as many of their own soldiers as possible, as many people, to create a picture for Russian TV. This war is not about Ukraine. This war is all about internal Russian consumption. Right? So that way, now that we understand that, and I'm gonna probably say this again, the attack on Ukraine through Belarus forests and Chernobyl. This is the epiphany of their plan, right? This is how we know they're not planning to win. Okay? Or people will say, oh, but look, they managed to get to Kiev. And there was the American channel, I think, on this one, guys, on Nemiko Network, they were actually following this in one of their live shows. You can look it up. It's like first day of war. Like they were having it. They were having a discussion that you need to understand the history. When Chernobyl blew up, right, the wind was coming from here to here, right? I'm not gonna name which wind it is, but a lot of nuclear fallout basically ended up falling around here. And these forests, essentially almost nobody lives there. This is how Soviet Union managed to kind of keep it covered for a few days rather than a few hours. Right, so this whole territory is essentially like nuclear waste site. And all the people who go there, they know that you go there with the Geiger counter, and they will tell you that if you go down this road, down this path, it's okay. But if you go like 2 meters to the left or to the right, and you have a radiation that jumps like to the top. Essentially, when the radiation fallout landed on there, it never got disturbed. So it's still there in the dust, in the ground, right? And it's gonna take years for it to disappear. Well, when Russian tanks and people carriers and trucks started going across those roads, they kicked up all that dust. And if you look around history, that videos or look at the maps, the radiation in that area has jumped up like 1,000-folds, because the radiative dust has came up, and they have sensors all over the place to obviously keep track, because it's a nuclear base site, and the radiation measurements have just went through the roof. So all that dust has been kicked up from the ground, and they still send in troops through those areas with no protective equipment. Right? Thousands and thousands of people, thousands and thousands of soldiers being driven through nuclear waste, which has been kicked up in the air, in the dust, by the tanks and carriers and everything else. Right? And they don't care. No defensive, no protective equipment, not even like gas masks or something like this to filter that shit out. The fact that these guys don't light up at night is a fucking miracle. These guys are then gonna have to go back home with radiation poisoning. How long will they last? How bad is their death going to be? And this is why I'm saying is that help is required to Ukraine, not just for the Ukrainians. These guys are being condemned to a horrible death through radiation poisoning by being driven through some of the most radioactive areas in the world. This is why Ukrainians never fought them near the station of Chernobyl. They looked at them and they went, these guys are fucking nuts. They offered the civilians there to evacuate, and then they left. Because a firefight, even not the one that does not hit the reactors, but the firefight with explosions, with shells blowing up, with bombs blowing up in that area could kick up enough radioactive dust and stuff like this to give Europe a second fucking Chernobyl. Right? That is insanity. Why do you think Belarus soldiers, Belarus army right now does not want to go fight to Ukraine? Because they know they have to go through this. Let alone being killed in Ukraine, they have to go through this. Right, look around for the red forests in Ukraine and Belarus. I think red forests or orange forests. Look them up, the pictures of the places where there was a nuclear fallout and the trees are still like became orange from all the nuclear fallout. Nothing grows there. They have to go through this. Right, Belarus president is now can say to the Russians, sorry, I can't send my people to Ukraine. Obviously, he doesn't want to do this. He understands that his days are finished. But his soldiers don't want to go there. Not just because they don't want to go fight Ukraine, it's because they know getting to Ukraine, where the Russians want to send them, is a suicide mission. All these troops going through a nuclear wasteland. It's very beautiful there. It's like a nature resort becoming. Because most of the plants and animals who survived in there, they've done it so many generations that they've learned to fight radiation. But humans didn't. Right, the fact that these guys come into Ukraine and not glowing at night is a scientific fucking wonder. But they will have to go back. They will have to go back to Russia. These guys. Sooner or later, they're gonna go back home to Russia. Do you think somebody's gonna give them anti-cancer cell treatment? Anti-radiation poisoning treatment? I don't think so. But this is the main proof that Russian government does not want to, well, they hoping to win this war, but their main objective is not the victory of this war. This whole situation is being manufactured for the internal market, for the internal consumer. I know some people think, oh, it's the West that made Russia attack. No, it isn't. It's the Russian president that made Russia attack. Their talk about Ukraine not joining NATO. Before Russians attacked, Ukraine had it written in their constitution. It was a constitutional law that Ukraine will not join any military alliance. Okay? Russians invaded, Ukrainians kind of changed their mind. So as we can see that Russians have not succeeded, like, to be honest, by now, if Russians were successful, truly successful and truly concentrated in their operations, like I say, that territory would be under their control. If they didn't waste their forces here, if they didn't want to see this as an opportunity to kill off their guys and maybe rob some factories for some plans and designs and some equipment. That's all they wanted. Right? That would have been captured if they had any sort of success. But it isn't. So Russia has lost this war. Belarus president has lost this war. So I'm not gonna be surprised if this guy gets taken out to one of those forests we were talking about earlier, and quietly buried in the woods after somebody shoots him in the head. Right. The support for the war in Russia, yes, there are lots of people who would support the war And the thing for this is that there's many Russian people, commentators will say, is that the fact that, for example, about 75% of Russian population doesn't even have an international passport. So they've never traveled outside of Russia. They've never seen outside the world. Actually, many of them have not seen outside their village or maybe local town. So you have vast numbers of population who do not really have access to use, not even access, use of internet. Or if they do use it, it's going to be like mostly like a local group of people who listen to the same Russian news they do. And I've met that. I've talked to Russian people who were asking me questions like, which were essentially peddled on Russian news, and they say, "Oh yeah, but I don't watch TV and I don't read Russian newspapers." Like, oh yeah, but you getting your information from people who do. You're not getting your information from people from another side. So they say, well, this is why I ask you. And we had this conversation with them that, like, look, this is a lie and this is a lie. And sometimes it's very hard to persuade them. They say, well, these people who told me this, they're very trustworthy. It's like, yeah, but I'm here. I'm with you. And I was sending people like videos of other sources, and they're like, oh, I've never seen that. I've never heard that. They don't even look for other solutions. So many people in Russia do support this war right until the bodies start to come back. Right? Many Russian channels say that there's only a few hundred Russian soldiers that have been killed. Ukrainians say that the confirmed number of kills is over 10,000 right now. Dozens of helicopters, dozens of planes, and like I said, yes, Ukrainian forces, Ukrainian air forces, and Ukrainian military forces, yeah, they're not as big as Russians, but the equipment in there is much better. Russians did not expect that. For some reasons, they expected that Ukrainians have never upgraded their equipment. For some reasons, they expected that everybody here is just going to be, yeah, please come in. Well, that never happened. That was obvious for anyone but the Russian government, apparently. Right? Yes, they paid lots of Western journalists to say that Ukrainians are Nazis. Let's say the guys have shown they're not the only ones. They're just kind of the ones I know of, and God knows how many. But in reality, they failed because they started this war too soon. They could not they did not have a chance not to start this war too soon, because their own internal polls were showing that Russia was going to shreds, and it will go to shreds. Russia as a state is going to stop to exist within a few months to a few years. Not just because of the Western sanctions, which came 15 years too fucking late, but because the actions of the Russian government have drove Russia to the verge of deterioration, falling apart into different states. I'm not gonna raise up the map of Russia, but we can safely say that the far east of Russia is probably gonna vote to join Japan, or at least be as close to Japan as possible. Again, in there they had some big projects which were meant to impress the foreigners, but as soon as you went outside the couple of central areas, they were still living in the worst parts of Soviet era of 1960s. Right, they have not developed since then. But those are the areas which are full of natural resources, and they want to get properly paid and to have proper investments based on the resources they bring in. We can also see the parts of Russia which are next to China, which are essentially China now. They have more Chinese people living there than Russian people. And we're not talking Russian people as in Russian people, we're talking Russian citizens of any nationality. Right? Those areas are gonna vote to join China. Not sure why China wants them, but they want them. We're already seeing, those who don't know, there's been a case where China has rented some land all the way to the lake of Baikal, and then they've been caught laying pipes from Baikal into China to run the water from the lake into China to use it in their deserts. Right? One of the most valuable natural resources right now is water, and it's being taken from Russia free of charge. And those areas are gonna probably vote to go to China. There's a lot of areas who would want their own independence and their own states. And right now they were saying, yeah, Moscow has been taking our money, they've been taking our boys, and yeah, they took their money, they took their boys, and they sent their boys to die in Ukraine, just so that they could create a picture on their TV screen of the world hating Russia. We don't hate them, we just want them to fuck off home. And at home they can do whatever they want. There's always been truth for Ukrainians. This has always been truth for everybody else. Russia has not been under any threat of invasion or military action since the end of the Second World War. And now Russia is going to pay the price for being the aggressor. The price they're going to exact on themselves by themselves. They already lost in Ukraine. Yes, they're still going to send troops. Yes, they're still going to get these troops to die. Yes, this is not finished yet. And yes, Ukraine does need support. But this support is not because Ukraine needs to win. This support is to stop people from dying in this unnecessary war, in this unnecessary conflict, which has been generated by a lunatic. Alright guys, thanks for listening to me. If you managed to last to the end, I hope you do fine. I'm really hoping that me saying that this is gonna last for a while longer I'm really hoping I'm wrong. I'm really hoping that really in the next hours, maybe days, somebody helps the world by doing what Russian generals did to the last Russian Tsar, as in just getting him to resign and then quietly getting him killed. But, that's what happened in history, and I'm just hoping that there are Russian generals who care about their soldiers enough to learn from the Russian generals of their past. Okay, guys, I hope I'm literally hoping for that. I'm hoping, but I know it's probably not so. And I want to be wrong in that. I want to be wrong in saying that this is gonna last for days, not for hours, but it will. And the more people do to help, and I'm not saying in just military way, obviously, many people have went to Ukraine to join Ukrainian military. We're not talking just about this. We're talking by calling out the channels which are warmongering, by writing letters to YouTube, anybody out YouTube or their local governments, by pointing out the journalists, making sure that these people who are defending this kind of crazy stuff, right, and pay the price they have to pay in any legal ways necessary. So let's say getting them cancelled on YouTube, this is the time when you need to do this. Okay, anybody who defends war for these kind of reasons that Russia does, I'm not saying that war doesn't happen. Wars happens. Shit, it's like the West was never really such a pretty. West also got into wars and conflicts. Hell, we all do shitty stuff. We're not saying that, but we should hold ourselves and others to a higher standard. If people want to be in charge of the world, if people want to lead the world ahead, right, we need to make sure that there's no unnecessary loss of life. Okay? So, thank you very much. Thank you for listening to me. I hope you can find some other interesting sources. If there's people who want to take this, what I did, and just make it in something more palatable, I'm happy for you to use what I said if you agree with me, and make sure that this war ends as soon as possible. Alright, guys, thank you very much. Have a good day, and Slava Ukraini. Bye.